Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm about to start the show. I know you want to hear the podcast, but I've got to plug my books. I wrote them for you. Start with Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, a best-selling book. And why is it best-selling? It shows you how to look at your life from the attacker's point of view. That's right. It helps you see things the way attackers see it, so you're more likely to avoid violent encounters altogether. It has 2 workbooks that go with it. The first one is the threat assessment workbook, so you can apply what you understand how the attacker thinks. And the second workbook is the defense assessment, where you take all of that knowledge you've learned how attackers look at you and you build your own defenses. There's nothing else like this. Nobody else shows you how the attackers look at you and then teach you how to defend against that and then give you workbooks to employ that knowledge in your own life. Just think about it. You could make your business, your school, your family safer by looking at them from the attacker's point of view and then employing that into your life through the workbooks. Also, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. It's a book full of lessons. The lessons aren't written in words, though. The lessons are built in the pictures. You can then go to teamlittlebigs.com and download the lesson plans so that the parent can have the lesson plans, the child gets the book, and as they go through the pictures in the book, you can then point out the lessons and understand yourself where they're located in the pictures by looking at the lesson plans at teamlittlebigs.com. That's all. That's all you need to secure your entire family. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's 2 workbooks, and The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, at teamlittlebigs.com, where the lesson plans are. Put that all together. You will be safer. I wouldn't have written them and I wouldn't be selling them if I didn't care and if I didn't feel like I could put what needed to be in there for you to make you safer. Go get them, and let's start the show.
Heard a lot of criticism of former Vice President Joe Biden from civil rights activists. The election obviously will be a choice. How do you think Biden matches up compared to President Trump when it comes to these issues that are important to you?
Well, hands down, Trump not only needs to not be in office in November, but he should resign now. Trump needs to be out of office. He is not fit for office. And so what we are going to push for is a move to get Trump out, while we're also going to continue to push and pressure Vice President Joe Biden around his policies and relationship to policing and criminalization. That's going to be important. But our goal is to get Trump out.
Jonathan Gilliam back in on the Experts Podcast. The truth has arrived. And as I turn that music down, what a soundbite that was at the beginning of the show. That was one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter. Remember, when you say Black Lives Matter, most people don't realize that they're referring to an organization that was started by communists, this woman being one of them. And the asinine things that they're requesting has infiltrated into, I guess, what should be an upstanding message going around. But that's why they don't say all lives matter, because these people that run these organizations, these liberation theology type of organizations, they're not interested in unification. That's not what they preach. It's not what they do. It's not what they want. They're leftist. And this woman, Patriots Colors, yes, that's her real name, I guess, is one of those communists. So when I saw this soundbite, and the story that comes along with it, it typified, I think, exactly what's happening here. And I'm going to talk in a minute about Chaz or Chad or whatever they're calling the autonomous zone there in Seattle. This woman and the people that founded Black Lives Matter, remember, they didn't come up with that to fix what's happening in the inner city. That's not what occurred, okay? They weren't doing that. What they're doing is they are manufacturing crises in the country with no solutions. That's not what they don't solve problems. They create problems, or they take existing problems, which there is a problem between the inner city and law enforcement. And as I've said time and time again, mostly brought on by the inner city. I mean, let's look at what happened this weekend, okay? This weekend, as we kicked off Father's Day, what a way to celebrate. Let me look up the exact numbers now. Let's see, this weekend, how many shootings? Okay, here you go. Chicago, this weekend now, 70 shot, 11 fatally. That means 11 people killed and 70 shot by non-cops. Mostly, if not 100%, black on black crime. You've also seen in New York City, when I stopped counting, it was 19. And 19 shootings in New York, which was a huge spike. All these things are happening. It's happening in Seattle. It's happening in Minneapolis. It's happening where law enforcement has backed off. And so what you're seeing now is an increase in what's going to happen. And that's what these people want. They don't want any type of solution, which I've talked about in this show. Anybody who's listening to this show for the first time, go back and listen to some of the other shows that I've done. And I've been talking about this for years. The real problem exists in the inner cities around this nation. The inner cities around this nation are predominantly black. Some of them are Latino in certain areas. All of them violent. Every single one of the major crime-ridden inner cities are within cities that are ran by Democrats. And these activist groups exist off the chaos that comes from that. Law enforcement tactics are created from the chaos that comes from there. Drugs are smuggled into there so that they can be distributed from there and out of there around the country. It's a terrible thing what's going on there. And there, believe it or not, there are good people that live there. It's very similar of what's happened in this autonomous zone, which I'm going to go over again in a minute, in Seattle, where, hey, go figure, leftists, communists, anarchists, all these people kind of roll together. They all have taken over this 6-block area where about 30,000 people live and businesses were thriving. It was a largely gay community and arty type of community. And now those people don't know what to do that live there. There's no police force. There's nothing to protect them from the protectors. And there's been a shooting, there's been rapes, there's been all kinds of stuff going on there. Multiple assaults. One person was killed this weekend there. And so what you're seeing in the inner city is the same thing that you're seeing there. It's a lawless zone. Drugs, fake philanthropy of people sending food and sending money there. And then who runs it? Who runs this autonomous zone? The strongest person. The strongest person that has leftist-leaning values, if you want to call those values. So when you hear that soundbite, now I'll play it once more for you now that you kind of have a little bit of a background on who's talking and what she's saying. Listen to how she does not even answer his question about Joe Biden. She goes straight into the fact that they want to get rid of Trump. They want Trump out. Well, this isn't the way the country works there, Miss Collars. This isn't the way our country works. You know, it's a democracy. Unfortunately, it's a republic. But unfortunately, the way things have changed in this country is that people on the left and the right are easily fooled into believing things that are not true and led astray by people who are either seeking money or power or trickery. And people fall for it. They fall for it very easy. I literally don't believe anything anybody says anymore unless I can prove it. So let me play the soundbite again. I want you to listen to this. Again, this is, how the heck do you say her name? Patrice Cullors.
A lot of criticism of former Vice President Joe Biden from civil rights activists. The election obviously will.
By the way, if you didn't know, that's Jake Tapper, speaks completely out of his nose. I don't even think he moves his mouth. It's the most nasally person I've ever heard in radio or TV.
Be a choice. How do you think Biden matches up compared to President Trump when it comes to these issues that are important to you?
Well, hands down, Trump not only needs to not be in office in November, but he should resign now.
Yeah. And it'd be so much better if you were in charge. I'm sure of it, because these people are such critical thinkers. They're not. Listen, you can think critically or deeply or over and over again about whatever form of government you want or whatever your ideology is, but it doesn't mean that you're a critical thinker. There are people who have have profound ideas in their minds of what they want, but they haven't thought them out critically because they're a biased person from the very beginning, and their thoughts are unrealistic. And the last thing that this woman wants is to unify. I mean, it's obvious the way that she speaks. These people are bullies. These communist leftists are bullies. Has nothing to do with the color of their skin. Has everything, well, it could, I don't know, but it really has all to do with their narcissism and this road they've gone down that has been around for thousands of years, that we must progress or we must change it, or this utopia that is very, very non-godly, that it's almost separate from God, where they want to have a utopia here on earth. Really sounds a lot like Satan, doesn't it? Sounds a lot like Satan. Like he wants that Garden of Eden back, and he wants to put the humans underneath his thumb and just squeeze them all the time. That's what I think this is all about in the long run.
Trump needs to be out of office. He is not fit for office. And so what we are going to push for is a move to get Trump out, while we're also going to continue to push and pressure Vice President Joe Biden around his policies and relationship to policing and criminalization. That's going to be important. But our goal is to get Trump out.
That's some goal. That's going to do so much to stop all the problems in all the cities that are ran by leftist Democrat governors and mayors and city council people and chiefs of police. You see, none of those people that I just named are trying to do anything to solve the real problem. They're not trying to get police and communities together to mend that rift. They're not trying to stop violence. I'm going to tell a story here in just a second that I was reading about some guy. I think it was in, let me see where this was at. I think it was in California, where he was, his younger brother was found hanging in a tree in a park near Palmdale's City Hall last week. So, as it turns out, the guy committed suicide. And yet activists came in, and as I read the story, you'll see they came in, they're wanting accountability for all this, and they're going on. And look, there's been mistakes before where somebody actually was murdered and they said they committed suicide. But regardless of this, when you look at the violent behavior of his brother just a couple days later, where he shoots it up with police and then gets killed himself, you start to see a pattern in the family. Regardless of how people describe them as happy-go-lucky. I've met lots of people, well, I wouldn't say lots. I've met a few people who were, when you met them, you thought everything was going just great. And then you find out that they're coke addicts or that they killed themselves or something like that. So you can never judge a book by its cover. It's what the content of their actions is. And there's something obviously going wrong in there. I want to hear what she has to say, the rest of what she has to say. I think that was it.
Patrice Cullors, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was it. I had to listen to him again. So when I saw this, I thought it was a good way to start the show out because it shows a good example of the reality of what's going on in this leftist movement that is not a movement for equality or unity or none of that stuff. Now, let me tell you a story real quick about Taron Boone. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. He was distraught when his younger brother was found hanging from a tree in a park near Palmdale City Hall last week. Now, I'm reading this from Yahoo News, just so I can say that. And the manner of death of his 24-year-old brother, Robert Fuller, evoked ugly images this is the way this is written, of the nation's racist legacy of lynchings and sparked outrage when Los Angeles County Coroner Sheriff Office quickly listed it as a suicide. Okay, so that entire paragraph right there was written by someone with an agenda. That is not reporting right there, okay? What that is no different than what you would get in any of the tabloids, the gossip tabloids. That is written purely to invoke emotion. That's it. I mean, look at what they said. The 24, okay? We're not talking about people who have mounds of experience in life. 24-year-old Robert Fuller evoked ugly images of nation's racist legacy of lynchings and sparked outrage when Los Angeles County Coroner Sheriff's Office officials quickly listed it as a suicide. It's just, they don't know this. They don't know anything about the real image. There's no picture up here of what occurred. I mean, the guy could have been hanging in a garage or in his kitchen. They would still have said the same thing. And the way that they made it out to be as though the coroner and the sheriff's department quickly did the autopsy and got it out of there. I mean, they have ways of, there could have been cameras there. They didn't talk about any of this stuff. But what do you think happened? Protests generated national attention and prompted local authorities to involve state and federal investigators. I mean, this is just typical for what's going on right now. But the story gets even crazier. And the way that people react to the story is just as crazy. So on Wednesday, after this, this occurred where they found the body, and these protests happened, exactly a week after his brother's body was found, Boone, who was 31, remember the other guy was 24, this guy's 31, was shot and killed by Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies in what authorities described as a wild shootout in the desert town of Palmdale. Unbelievable. And so I think some of you are probably asking, if you hadn't read the story, did the cops like get an argument with him and kill him? No, it wasn't that. The shooting ended in a bizarre series of events in which authorities accused Boone of pistol whipping, imprisoning, and threatening a former girlfriend over a week-long period. It's unclear what, if any, connections Boone's shooting had to his brother's death, and many questions remain. That's what they're saying. There's many questions. Sounds like, I don't know why there'd be so many questions. It's hard to understand why there would be so many questions unless Isabella Flax, a 24-year-old activist, shows up from Lancaster. She just happened to be in town and showed up and said that a news conference Thursday had demanded justice for Fuller. Now they're demanding justice for Fuller. Justice for what? One guy hung himself. The other guy got in a shootout after holding a woman hostage. I'm not sure what justice she's looking for. And this is what she actually says. Well, who cares about the circumstances? It doesn't even matter what he did anymore. It doesn't matter what they do anymore. It does not matter. That's what this 24-year-old activist from Lancaster said about a guy who got into a shootout with authorities after holding a woman hostage and pistol whipping her. I mean, I can't even, you should be sitting there with your mouth hanging wide open. Of course, they went on and said that friends of Boone said that they could not reconcile the man that they knew. He was a fun-loving fashion junkie who uplifted people with his hip-hop music. With violent crimes he was charged with committing and the way he did. They can't reconcile that. Well, obviously, the lady that he pistol whipped and then kidnapped, I'm sure she kind of understands it. I'm sure the cops who were getting shot at understand it. And they said that he was greatly disturbed by his brother's death. What did that have to do with him pistol whipping and holding a woman hostage? So the story goes on, but doesn't make any sense really. And the way this is written is so bizarre. And if people believe this, it's so bizarre that they actually feel like this activist, Isabella Flax, the 24-year-old that knows so much about life and how police work. That's the other thing I'm finding. All these people that hate police, they really don't understand the way police work, and they really don't understand what they go through. I wish they should start doing, like, instead of undercover bosses, they should do undercover activists and let these activists go out with cops and see how they are. How the reality, how they going to police it, see if that works. When they go into a domestic scene and there's shit diapers everywhere, stench so bad that it makes you want to throw up, and people are duking it out high or drunk and armed. How are you going to handle that, Isabella Flax? They won't. They don't know how to handle that. Of course, they're going to be trying that in many cities while they send out social workers now to deal with the subject that I just described. So, again, they bring up all the other stuff. If bullets were flying and somebody almost got shot, well, they could have been shot, and so on and so forth. And listen, there was an episode today actually, at one of the beaches in New York. Yeah, they have beaches in certain areas around New York, and I guess down by the boardwalk, something happened. I don't know if that was ESU. It was NYPD ESU, but it's definitely NYPD. And they apprehend a guy, and this big dude, cop, has the guy in a chokehold. And there's like 4 cops on top of him, and the guy is out. I mean, like, he is like dead to the world. He's not dead, but he's out. When you put somebody in a correct chokehold, it's not going to take long for them to they're out. And but he's still squeezing this dude pretty hard. And the other cop finally, once they get him cuffed, taps the guy on the shoulder, and he lets go of him. Now, that tactic may seem harsh. The guy got checked out of the hospital, and was released and charged with, I don't know what he was charged with. So they didn't kill him. He actually applied it correctly. But how stupid is this guy? How stupid are they? If they don't realize it's a team, okay? Now I'm going to the other extreme. First, I was talking about how ridiculous the story is and how ridiculous these activists are. Let's go to the other side, okay? If I was the cop in Atlanta, which that was a totally justified shooting, and I pull some dude over, and when I start to cuff him, he starts to wrestle or fight with me, man, I am letting the dude go. And listen, I was a hard charger when I was in law enforcement, and when I was in the SEAL teams. I'm all about getting the job done, but not in this environment. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. Whatever policy they put out there, you either follow it to a T. I would actually come back about 20% in my aggression. If somebody starts to get too aggressive with you, that's the public's fault. But the problem is, it's never going to get worked out. And so law enforcement's getting in these predicaments and being hyper aggressive to a point where they don't even realize. I mean, are you that much of an adrenaline junkie that you don't even realize people are standing around you, yelling at you, he can't breathe, and the dude's passed out? I mean, I don't know how stupid you have to be as a law enforcement officer to be doing that right now when the entire world is focused on every move that you make. And so is the rest of law enforcement. All those cops out there. That yesterday, millions of cops interacted with people and nothing happened, or they got arrested properly. Or in some cases, I'm sure a lot of cops were like, see ya. Now, I don't agree with that. And I had a soundbite the other day I was going to play, but it was so stupid I didn't even play it, where some attorney from Atlanta was talking, or he's a radio show host down there, was talking about they, when he started to fight him, they had his license, they had his car, they knew where he lived. So that's what we're supposed to do with everybody in a real world, like we were living. If somebody tries to fight the cops, just let them go. Well, I guess that's what we're supposed to do now. I would not be putting myself into that situation. And I hate saying that for cops, but if you think the only way for you to get somebody down is to get them into a chokehold, then I wouldn't do it. I would not do it. And again, I'm not a person, and I was not an officer of the law that would have not arrested somebody that needed it. But I also, if I had to increase the force, and there were a couple times when I was on arrest that I had to do that, I did what I needed to do in order to make the arrest. And, unfortunately with the chokehold, it's such a sticky situation now that even though it is an effective tool when used properly, or tactic when used properly, it's too big of a risk now for you officers. I'm telling you, for you. It's too big of a risk for you to where not only, and everybody's saying, well, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Okay. Look, if you do something correctly, like happened in Atlanta, that officer's being brought up on murder charges. And that's not a case where I don't want to be judged by 6 people or 12 people, by 12 people in this day and age for a shooting or choking. You may actually spend the rest of your life in jail. You may not go home either until the day you die. Until the world gets their crap straight, I would be very careful. I would just be trying to mend fences and be nice to everybody. And if somebody goes through the roof like that, and tries to start something, look, the communities have spoken. And I know what everybody's saying. Well, no, I didn't speak like that. I know lots of people who want cops to be funded and want cops to be, well, you and everybody that listens to this show and everybody out there that says they're conservative, I don't see you out doing anything. I know you're at home, you're all over Twitter. That doesn't do a thing. Why aren't you having counter marches saying fund the police, allow chokeholds if that's what you want in your city? Help, let's get the inner city cleaned up. Let's build a bridge between law enforcement and the inner city. You're not protesting that. So you know what? You are to blame. And I know one of you said, well, I can't do it on my own. I know. Listen, I planned to protest back in, I think it was 2016 when de Blasio was, it might have been 15, but de Blasio was already screwing the police over. Everybody was up in arms. This is when I was on the radio and TV a lot. And so I put it out on social media. Let's have a support the law enforcement rally in front of the mayor's office and let him know what we think. Oh, yes, everybody, hundreds and hundreds of people. People were talking about driving from other places and all this stuff. We're going to do it on a Sunday. Yes, perfect. It's embarrassing to say this, folks. No one showed up. No one. I went to a rally yesterday for all these elderly that were killed by Cuomo's decision to put COVID patients in the retirement homes. The same people that come to that every time we're out there who lost loved ones. Where's the rest of you? I put it out on social media. So many people are, hearting it or retweeting it. None of you showed up. Because you're lazy. You're freaking lazy. That's why. You don't want to take part in what has to happen in order to sustain your freedom. And some of you are going to be like, well, that's not true. I work hard. I pay my taxes. Whoop-de-freaking-do. while you pay your taxes and you work, although you've had several months off, the world is crumbling around you. They tore a statue down of the guy who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. They're taking from the Museum of Natural History, they're taking a statue down of Theodore Roosevelt. I mean, they tore a statue down of George Washington in Portland last week, tied a flag around his head, and lit it on fire. And you won't get off your lazy asses to go out there and show the world that the people in this country that understand what freedom is about and what it takes to sustain freedom, you won't get off your rear ends and go down and do your own protest. You won't. You won't drive 4 hours or pay for a plane ticket to fly to D.C. for the day and fly home to march on Washington, D.C. You won't do it. And you know what's going to happen? Do you know what's going to happen? Through trickery, through bullying. Do you know how many people have lost their jobs over the past month because of these children on social media accusing their teachers who are conservative of being racist, or going again and trying to get college students who have scholarships, getting them thrown out of school, faking that they're going to go to the Trump rally to make it seem like it's more populated than it was so that people stay home. Democrat mayors closing down city streets, making it harder for people to get to the rallies. All this stuff is happening while you become a victim. And you're becoming oppressed is the reality. Your laziness is going to bring about oppression on you. It's going to bring about, look at South Africa. Look at places like that where the same thing has happened. Right? Instead of people mending fences and unifying, that's not what happened. They gave absolute power to the activists, and now they're doing stuff like raiding farmers' homes and killing them, white farmers, and taking their land. Right? They're doing the exact same thing that they accuse other people of that are white of doing to them. Fixes nothing. It absolutely fixes nothing. That's why I don't listen to these activists, because they're full of crap. But so are you all, the conservatives, the constitutionalists in this country. I heard from so many people that are saying they belong to militias, right? These weekend non-governmental warrior programs where it's like being a volunteer firefighter. You show up, 10 people fight, the same 10 people every week or every night fight the fire, while the rest of the guys stand around in their uniforms after driving 100 miles an hour in their cars and trucks that are kitted out with more lights than the Goodyear blimp. And they drive with their sirens going, they get there, and then they go get 9/11 tattoos, FDNY tattoos, and they never do anything. And they're fat and lazy. And it's the same thing with these militias. And with all these different Republican groups that are out there. What's up with, like in Florida, they celebrate Trump every other week down there in Palm Beach. There's always rallies going on down there. Speakers and stuff. I don't ever see any of those people out marching. I don't ever see them shutting roads down, showing how powerful they can be. You know, a lot of these protests before this Black Lives Matter stuff started up after George Floyd's death, which was a murder, those protests were 100 people strong. That's it. Now they're tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, despite the coronavirus. Yet nothing. No, and I'm not even saying counter protest. There's no protest out there from the right. You don't see a sea of 100,000 red shirts and red hats that say "Make America Great," marching down together, black and white, and whatever other. There's other races besides black and white, you know. You don't see that. Why? Because you're lazy. And it takes like one person, this 24-year-old activist. I don't know what it takes to be an activist. I think it's just being loud, to get into a story and affect the way people think. Let's take, for instance, CHOP, which was Chaz, which is whatever. Seattle's cop-free Chaz. Now I'm looking down here. It says CHOP. I'm not sure which is which. It's all the same. You may remember the guy who got beat up by these leftists, Andy No. He went there and dressed in black like the Antifa people. And he went there. Let me pull this up, the story, because I highlighted some different things. So he goes there. That's not it. He goes there, and there it is. And he's there for 5 days. And he stays inside of there, and then he writes about it. And this was just recently. I mean, it hasn't been around that long. You know what the first thing they did? They built a wall. The first thing, they built a wall. Then they started strong-arming people. He says, this is his words here. He says, during 5 undercover days and nights in the zone, I witnessed a continuing experiment in anarchy, chaos, and brute force criminality. In order to avoid being exposed as a journalist, several reporters have been barred or expelled. I slept and showered outside the zone. Those inside have no showers, but they do have portable bathrooms. Lovely, but that smells great. I took meals and most of my water breaks elsewhere because I was reluctant to remove my mask and risk being recognized. Every day I entered the zone twice through its semi-porous borders, once in the early afternoon and again after sundown, staying until wee hours. Crime has surged inside and outside the zone, he reports. On Saturday morning, a shooting erupted. That was this last Saturday. That left at least one person dead and another injured near a border checkpoint. So they set up their own border and border walls, okay? The very first thing they do is what they just vilify Trump for wanting and the rest of the country for wanting. Okay, they set up a border and checkpoints, armed, by the way. This is being led by the same people who rally against the Second Amendment anytime they can. Police were reportedly met with resistance when they tried to get to the victims, who apparently were then taken in private cars to the hospital. Cops made it into the zone to gather shell casings and evidence, some reports said, as police in riot gear stood at the border. Why would you even enter into that place? I mean, I don't understand what's going on in the minds of cops. Listen, cops, you think, and when you get out of law enforcement, you're going to see reality. You think that you are the authority figure in this country. Right? There was a day and time when that was the case. Hello, officer. Thank you. Can I buy you a cup of coffee, officer? That is gone. Those days are gone. Largely because the inner city got worse. Law enforcement's tactics got more hardcore. Law enforcement lost all respect for the inner city, and they didn't realize that was an important tactic. Actually, trying to be a part of the community is, in fact, a tactic. They didn't even do that. Of course, the inner city, because it's so much crime in there, they didn't care or respect law enforcement. So this vicious cycle started. Well, we've reached the point where nobody cares. Why would you risk your life going inside there to get shell casings? You think the guy that got shot in there gives a crap about you? They would have you defunded and fired if they could. So, on Thursday, police arrested Robert James after he left the Chaz. He is accused of sexually assaulting a deaf woman who was lured inside a tent. The same day, former city council candidate Isaiah Willoughby was arrested on suspicion of starting the arson attack on the East Precinct June 12th, which is how this whole thing got started, I think. Police chief, what a chief, Carmen Best, stated that police response times to 9/11 calls in the surrounding area have more than tripled because they are down a station. They are down a station because of your crappy leadership and the fact that you all didn't take President Trump up on the National Guard. Period. He goes on to talk about ranging from several hundred. This is the occupant numbers in Chaz. It ranges from several hundred to 10,000, depending on the day, with many openly armed control. With many openly armed control the Capitol Hill neighborhood near downtown. The neighborhood is the heart of Seattle's gay and counterculture district and is densely filled with businesses, apartment buildings. Chaz now claims it all, and that's okay with their government. That's okay with Seattle's mayor. Interesting, though. As soon as police evacuated from the station nearly 2 weeks ago, mass protesters stole the city property, barricades, fencing, and more to create makeshift barriers. These barriers became the official border checkpoints in and out of Chaz. They were later fortified with additional layers of security, including a cement wall, which the city helped them build. More blockades and 24-hour guards. This is the best part of it, okay? Defund the police. They don't want any police there. They also have a large team of volunteers assembled to who have designated themselves as security for Chaz. So they'll take security with guns that aren't trained, but they don't want an authority figure that is certified by the Constitution, have to serve by the Constitution that was created by our founding fathers 240 years ago. They don't want that. Many of these people wear patches signaling they're part of the Puget Sound John Brown Gun Club, which I had never heard of before now, a far-left militia-type organization named after the radical abolitionists. Okay, so there you have it, folks. For all you on the right and all you conservatives and constitutionalists out there that say, you know, they don't want to go up against us because we got the guns. Well, they got guns too. Okay. The difference here, though, folks, is these people work together on a daily basis, and they're being taught things like tactics, shoot and move, how to burn buildings down, Molotov cocktails. How many of you people out there that are conservatives that say, yeah, come on, it'll take about a day and you'll be done. How many of you have ever made, lit, or thrown a Molotov cocktail? Do you know how it works? These people have been taught. Do you know how to flank an enemy? These people have been taught how to do that. That's how they get around these things. They flank. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. Imagine if the shooting starts. It's going to be different than you think. Well, you may be giving them more credit. Some of you may say, well, I may not be. I may not be giving them, I may be giving them the credit they deserve. Okay, because I've talked to guys from Delta Force that were on the roof in Berkeley during some of these things that were happening up there, and they said they were watching those people organize, and the tactics they were using did not come from our military, but they were recognizable tactics of warfare. And the one guy that I talked to said he was very concerned about that, very concerned about their speed to muster, organize, and maneuver. Now you try that with 100 patriots from around your state that have never done anything together. Most of them don't even know tactics. Yeah, you may own guns, but owning a gun and being willing to use it against somebody like this, who's organized, who's practiced maneuvers, may not go as well as you think. I hope this is scaring you, because it scares the shit out of me, to be quite honest with you. Not these people. I'm trained. What scares me, though, is that, I have plenty of SEAL friends in the country, but doesn't mean they're right across the street from me if something goes down. I can't rely on Jimmy Barstool, the guy who hangs out with the local militia, to get my back. I'm not going to be able to rely on my buddies from the NYPD. They're going to be too swamped themselves. And the same thing with you out there. Any of you people, you're not thinking this through. Well, you're kind of going over the board there, man. You're like, you're talking about civil war here. Yeah. This is 2020. Have you seen what's occurred in this year? I mean, we're only in June. We've had a major, whether you believe it's true or not, virus that seems to turn on and turn off. We've had literally a destroying of city. You know, they don't loot in the inner city. I don't know if you realize that. They loot in the nice areas, right? They protest in the nice areas. They don't go, it's not always in city center as well. They burned down more stuff in the past month than has been burned down by looters and rioters in the past 10 years. I'm not just making this stuff up. The stuff that they're saying is what I'm basing my analysis on. Not what I think could happen. I'm basing it on the totality of what they're saying and what they're doing. And they're doing what they're saying. That is alarming. So last year, one of the group's members of this Puget Sound John Brown Gun Club, this far left militia organization, one of its members last year carried out an armed attack on an immigration customs enforcement facility in Tacoma, Washington. That was Willem Van Spronson. He tried to ignite the 500-gallon propane tank attached to the facility. He was killed by police. How many of you have gone out there and tried to attack a building, light a propane tank on fire, blow up a building and kill people? Right? I'm not saying go do that. What I'm saying is these people are doing it. So it's not just going to be, oh, you know, let the left come up against us. We got all the guns. It doesn't matter if you haven't trained. They could have one. You could have 50. If they have 50 people, they know how to surround you and throw Molotov cocktails and do all this stuff, and you have never done anything, you can shoot all you want. You're going to lose. Andy goes on to say, despite the group's link to violent extremism, its armed members were celebrated in the Chaz for protecting the new area. Said the head of Chaz's security, okay, again, they don't want cops. But the second thing they did after developing a border wall and checkpoints where they harass people wanting to get in was to develop what they call a security team that, guess what? Police the area. So the head of the Chaz security team is a short female named Creature. I kind of get the impersonation of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo when I think about that. She and the rest of her team communicate with walkie-talkie devices and earpieces. Earpieces are the first thing gearhounds and wannabes put on. You know how most cops end up communicating once they become detectives? With their phones. It's probably the most reliable thing you can use. So some of them openly carry rifles, handguns, batons, or knives in an area that is filled with people that hate the Second Amendment. Interesting. Their operating base is in the open air eating section of the Rancho Bravo Taco Mexican. Let me say it again. Rancho Bravo Tacos Mexican Restaurant. You are not going to sell a lot of shit with that name. Okay. Signs posted all over their base declares no photos, no videos. The more they describe these people and the way they think is exactly the way it is on a military base, in a police department, in a federal building. So he says, though Chaz claims to have no rules, it quickly developed a complex code of conduct that varied from zone to zone. So they got zones in there. I mean, how was a zone like 15 feet? So zone to zone, and even the time of the day. For example, those in the garden area who are mostly white need to make sure they do not recolonize the space. I don't know what that means. Okay. Lacking agreed upon leadership. This is even better. This is kind of like the Democrat Party. Those who have naturally risen to the top have done so with force and intimidation. For example, rapper Raz Simone real name Solomon Simone, patrols Chaz on this, just like a cop, like a bad cop, actually. That's what's interesting. That's the other thing. They patrol the area and police it just like somebody who is a bad cop would patrol it and police it. That's very fascinating, the way these things occur, isn't it? So let me pull it back up here. You just can't make this stuff up. It's hard to believe this is actually happening, but it really is. So he patrols Chaz on some nights with an armed entourage. Sometimes not. Simone, originally from Georgia, interesting, has an arrest record for child cruelty and other charges. So he's a really good guy to be out there. You know, you can really count on him doing the right thing. He usually conducts his patrols carrying a long semi-auto rifle and sidearm. Last weekend, a live stream recorded Simone handing another man a rifle from the trunk of his car. Hey, nothing to worry about there, right? It's crazy. Not everyone in Chaz recognized Simone's police-like presence. Of course, they're probably going to get an ass beating if they don't. But no one is willing to stand up to him and his group. Andy says there have been consequences to those who are perceived as challengers or threats. An independent Los Angeles-based journalist recorded Simone and his crew in the early hours of Monday morning. He was spotted by one of Simone's men who manhandled him and demanded he turn over his mobile device. Simone's team chased that individual and tried to drag him to the security tent. He escaped by hiding in a construction site outside of Chaz until police responded to his 911 call. So he's running from the security team to the police. So unfortunately, there are people that live there as well, and they don't have any part in this, right? They didn't ask for this, and they also have businesses there. Estimated 30,000 residents live there and have no say over their new overlords. Residents have discreetly voiced their concerns to local media groups, but gunshots and screams of terror at night are reported. And it's a hard thing. I'm not saying so what, but listen, that's the world that they live in there. Businesses outside Chaz are also suffering. Last week, the Trader Joe's in Capitol Hill announced it was closing immediately and indefinitely because of safety and security concerns. I wonder if their concerns are of the safety crew. Sounds like the child molesting rapist that run their security crew. It is difficult to decipher what Chaz occupants want. This is the best part of this. Each faction, whether liberal, Marxist, or anarchist, and they all run together, has their own agenda, but one online manifesto posted on Medium demands, no less than the abolishment of the criminal justice system. What will happen if demands aren't met? Well, Jaden Grayson, a young black woman who has developed a large following in Chaz, told a filmmaker, respond to the demands of the people or prepare to be met with by any means necessary. It's not even a warning, she says. I'm letting people know what comes next. You see, folks, the autonomous zone that they have there in Seattle, Chaz, whatever it's called, is exactly what's going to happen in and around this country where Democrats get what they want. The defunding of police, the disbanding of police departments, cuts in budgets. They have armed security policing the area, wearing masks, and using brute force to make people do what they want. They immediately put up a wall made of cement and put armed guards there and intimidate people throughout the entire camp based on the color of your skin. This is what you get when anarchists, communists, leftists, and liberals have full control of the power within the area that they want to rule. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we out of here.